When somebody hears your story, what do you hope they think?
I would hope that they think to themselves that if I'm still here, then they can do anything. If I'm still standing here today, then you need to take a good look at yourself and realize that whatever is in your way is not that big of an obstacle, because there's always a way around it, and that you can do anything you put your mind to, and that there is always a tomorrow as long as you choose for there to be one.
Why is it important for you to give hope to others?
Because other people out there, if they're in the place that I was in, then they're not going to try to give themselves hope. A lot of people are at a point where they've given enough on trying, and they need somebody to tell them, hey, come on, get back up, it's not over.
I hope you don't mind if I just ask this bluntly. How does somebody survive a shotgun blast to the face?
Honestly, I'm not too sure. The doctors told me that my chance of survival has been less than 1 in 500 million. You take the population of Houston, you multiply it by 100, and I'd be the only person surviving there. I'm honestly not sure why I survived. A lot of what took off my face was actually the blast, not the actual lead itself. The top of my head right here had a hole in it where they stuck a brain monitor. Actually, they took advantage of the fact there's already a hole there instead of needing to cut another one. I think, and this is just my belief, that because I had a long range shotgun, I had a long barrel shotgun, and it was at such point blank range, everything just passed through instead of tearing everything apart widespread. It was able to pass through without causing enough damage to kill me.
What is it like to know the likelihood of you being alive today is less than 1 in 500 million?
A lot of days before I used to wake up and say, wow, it's a miracle, I'm not supposed to be here. And now I wake up and say, wow, it's a miracle, I'm glad I'm here.
Why are you glad you're here?
Well, I didn't realize all the things I still had to appreciate. I had completely given up on life because I didn't have the things I wanted. And I wasn't focused on the things that I could have or already did have. I look up now and hearing the birds chirp around me is just a beautiful sound. I love it. I go outside at night, I listen to the crickets and I love it. Feeling the sun on my skin and knowing that, I do have family out there that cares about me, still needs me. My younger sister, my brother, my father. And all those things, I'm still here for those things. That's what I feel like.
What is the best way to greet a blind person?
I'll say a side hug or a handshake or, well, I'll say those two ways.
Do you have a preference?
Either or.
Okay, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
When somebody meets you for the first time, what do you hope they talk about?
Well, I was hoping they talk about things that I enjoy or things that they enjoy and not about, hey, what happened to you?
Do people sometimes start out with just that?
Yes.
What does that feel like to you when that's the first thing somebody says to you?
It feels like they're not really interested in me at all. They're just nosy, and that can be kind of upsetting. When all your only question or the only thing you have to say is what happened, and that's it. Because of the way that I look now, I get a lot of people that are, very nervous around me. I get people that are actually disgusted with me, it seems like. I don't know how to explain it. I get people that treat me like I'm a child. They talk to me like I'm young and frail or something like that. I get a lot of people that just don't treat me like I was like to anymore, like a person.
How does that make you feel?
It can be upsetting, but at the same time, I know that everybody has their own way of dealing with things, and not everybody can just walk up to somebody who has a face like mine and have a normal conversation with them. And so I have to, come to terms with it and not be upset by it.
Is that part of the reason you like wearing the sunglasses?
Well, not really. I don't think the sunglasses do anything for my appearance because most of what's going on is down here. I mostly just wear sunglasses for the dryness in my eyes. Being blind, you don't blink as much. And, it's sort of the thing you have to think about doing is blinking. And your eyes get very dried out. And because of the other medical problems I have, my eyes get very crusty. So I wear glasses to help keep the humidity in my eyes there.
How long have you been blind for now?
Since July 14th of 2023. So for 1 year and 8 months.
Tell me about your earlier years.
In my earlier years, I grew up with 3 siblings, and Honestly, I didn't have a mother who was around a whole lot. You know, she mostly was lost in her own thing, and I spent a lot of my time in foster care because of this. And most of my younger years, I really just tried to make friends my hardest, but spent most of my time isolated, not really able to figure out the social code.
What was it like for you attempting to make friends, but not really being able to make those connections?
It felt kind of like I was speaking a different language, honestly. It was like everybody around me was speaking in math, and I'm speaking in reading, and I had no clue how to, you know, like, hey, we want to hang out one day, or whatever. It was always so hard for me to just communicate with others.
What was it like being in foster care?
In foster care, you know, the first few times was very, very upsetting, going in and out. You go in and immediately everything's taken from you. You got all these rules you've never had before. You have to live with people you don't know. And it's not only a scary situation, it's an upsetting situation. And it's a situation that makes you feel powerless. It makes you feel very like a terrified child.
How long were you in foster care for?
Collectively, if I had to put the years together, let me think. I'll give it about 9 years collectively.
How old were you when you entered foster care?
The first time I got in?
Yes.
The first time I went in, I was probably around 7 or 5.
What would you say to a kid who is going through foster care and struggling to find that peace?
It's hard to find that peace, and you're gonna look for it your whole life in other people. But just understand that you gotta make peace with yourself first. Understand that you don't have to always have a lot of friends, but be happy with yourself, alright?
Tell me about your suicide attempt.
So, on July 14th, 2023, I had a desperate suicide attempt with a 12 gauge because I was finally at the end of my rope and I was tired of things going wrong. At the time, I didn't really have a good outlook on things. I tried my hardest to keep my head up anyway, and I tried my hardest to handle business, but the days just started to mix together, honestly, and started to feel gray. It started to feel like every day was just the same thing, and no matter how hard I worked, it wouldn't change that. And on July 14th, I lay down on the floor of my living room, curled up in a ball, and I shot myself with a 12-gauge shotgun. And next thing you know, I woke up 2 months later and I'm completely blind and they're explaining to me everything that's going on, how it happened, and the fact that I can't see anymore and why.
What was it like when you initially woke up and regained consciousness and realized you were still alive?
It might have been hours before they came in and talked to me, or it might have been a whole day. It felt like a whole day, honestly. But I had originally thought that I had died and gone to hell, that this was my version of the afterlife and I deserved it for what I did. And at first I was terrified that this was just what things were going to be like forever, being in empty dark space all around me, not knowing where I am, not hearing anything but weird little noises, which was the staff walking around the hallway and talking. And when they finally came in and explained to me what was going on, it offered a little bit of relief, because at least at that point I wasn't, crazy, but at the same time I was devastated to know that not only has my plan not worked out the way I wanted it to, but I came out a lot worse for wear, and I came out with less than I had gone in with. Came out without my eyesight, now in disfigures. And at first I was so upset by these, I didn't see any way I could move on with my life or even keep on living. And I still wanted to die after that for a long time.
What did doctors say about you surviving?
So they had told my family that while I was in the coma, they told my family I wasn't supposed to be alive, and that I most likely wasn't going to make it out of the coma. And they told them that if I did make it out, I was going to be a vegetable for the rest of my life. I was never going to speak or have rational thought again or move.
What's it like to know they believe that?
The fact that that was supposed to be the outcome and I'm still here, it blows me away. It makes me wake up and appreciate the first breath that I take in the morning, which I never did before in life.
How long were you in a coma for?
2 months. And this was actually a drug-induced coma that they put me under. When I first got to the hospital, they had resuscitated me on the way there, and while I was in the room, while they were treating me, they had to bind me down with restraints because I kept ripping out my IV and all the other tubes they had stuck in my neck and things. And so they had to bind me down, and the first time they did, I tore the restraints apart, so they did it twice, and they did it 3 times. And finally, they realized that no matter how many restraints they added, I was just too pissed off. So they put me in a drug-induced coma for 2 months after that, so that my body could recover and I would make it out of it.
Is there anything anybody could have done prior to your attempt that might have helped?
I honestly think that if people had just taken the time to, honestly, I had been trying to reach out to people I knew and like, hey, how's it going? Seeing if I can make myself feel better. I honestly just wish that more people had tried to say, hey, how are you doing? And come and see me and spend time with me.
What are some signs that a person is feeling depressed and it possibly may be more severe than that?
You'll notice that they're not taking care of themselves as well. They might not look as well kept. You'll notice that they're not going out as much. Or you'll notice that they're starting to lose weight, things like that. And sometimes people are functionally depressive. And these people, you don't know that they're depressed at all because there is no signs except for they're just not acting the same. They might not act right. You might take on them little social cues like, they hang up on you and they don't say bye or things like that. But for the most part, when people are depressed, you'll notice that they really start taking care of themselves, and you'll start to notice changes in their habits a lot and how they present themselves and their image out in public.
Why is it that when you're depressed, you stop showering?
When you're depressed, you generally just stop caring about everything, and things just take so much energy to do. It's like, it's not worth it. I don't feel like getting up and taking a shower. That's so exhausting. It feels like you're walking 100 miles from your bed to the shower just to get out of bed in the morning. And on top of that, you don't really see a reason to because you're not worried about what anybody else thinks. You're just lost in your own sadness.
Did you ever get evaluated for your mental health and get diagnosed with something like depression or PTSD?
I was actually diagnosed with bipolar at 8 years old, which is from what my doctor told me, the youngest age he has ever diagnosed anybody with something like that. And I was diagnosed with, I don't like to talk about it too much, but I was actually diagnosed with high functioning autism. And that has made social situations a little more difficult, even in my older years.
Why don't you like talking about it?
Well, because even if you were to explain to somebody, it doesn't make me any different. They automatically click into a state of mind where they look at you differently. And you can't do anything to change it after that point. And I've noticed that a lot throughout my life, so I just stopped telling people after a while.
If you don't mind, the last question I have about that is, how old were you when you were diagnosed with autism?
I was actually 14 years old.
How was your face impacted? Are you able to eat? Can you smell?
So I'm not able to smell at all, and even when my nasal passage was more opened up than this, I was not able to. I lost that from the gun blast. I am still able to eat by mouth. So I have approximately 5 teeth left, and I use those for chewing because 3 of them are on one side. That's the only reason why I'm still able to chew. And so I'm able to actually eat normally, but I have to be careful about what I choose to eat. I can't have anything like hard tacos, for example, but I can eat soft tacos all day. So I'm 100% blind, and I have 0 light perception. Some blind people can tell when the lighting in the room changes, but for me it's just pitch black all the time.
What was it like to adjust that after you woke up?
So when I first woke up, like we talked about before off camera, it was very depressing for the first year. So I still had dreams where I could see and then wake up and remember that this is how life is, and that was just a dream, I can't see anything. It was very depressing for the first year. I can no longer stay standing as long as I used to. Some of the surgeries they've done on me took the bone out of my leg, both of them. And I can't walk as far as long as I used to.
Right now I'm zoomed in on your leg. And you have a similar spot on the other one?
Uh-huh.
What did they do there?
So they took the fistula, the entire thing, all the way from almost at the knee to the ankle, and they used one of them to rebuild my lower jaw and one of them to rebuild my upper jaw.
What is it like for you to reflect on your childhood in foster care now that you're 21 years old?
I actually try to avoid it as much as possible because it puts me in a bad place mentally sometimes.
When you were in and out of foster care, how many different homes did you stay at?
I've gotten that question a few times, and that's honestly a number that would take up multiple pages. I couldn't answer it.
What is it like not having any stability?
Oh man, that is a terrifying feeling throughout your life. You already know you're going to lose what you have, but you're still terrified of it happening. All up until one or it does happen. And then when it does happen, you're like, crap, here we go again. And you're all pissed off and upset, and you're sad about it. And having no stability, it just feels like the rug is going to get pulled out from underneath you at any moment, constantly, and there's nothing you can do about it. So growing up, that was a feeling that I experienced a lot, and it was very aggravating.
I imagine that would lead you to believe that the world is a very scary place.
Definitely.
Do you still feel like that today?
No, I don't feel like the world is a very scary place. I feel like there's places you don't want to go, and then there's beautiful places.
Tell me about some of the beautiful places you have found.
One of the places that I went to, I like nature. I've always loved going outdoors, and nature has always been the most beautiful thing about this world to me. And there's actually this one, I guess you could call it kind of like a ridge, okay? Where it was like a giant rock face near one of the apartments I lived at before. And there's nothing but woods around it. And I'll go out there all the time to just hang out and explore and enjoy the beautiful nature and everything.
Is the way you enjoy nature different now that you're blind?
Definitely. I enjoy it all based off of sound and vibration and the way the sun feels and the wind feels on my skin now.
Are there things that you didn't notice prior that you enjoy now?
I used to love looking at the birds and the way that they looked. Never really paid close attention to how they sounded as much. I thought that what they could be trying to say to each other.
What were your first 7 years like? Was it just hectic being with your bio mom?
Yeah, honestly, growing up with her, it was honestly scary because she still does have a drug abuse problem. And growing up, it was never knowing if she was going to be absolutely crazy and just beat the crap out of you because you spilled a glass of orange juice, or if it was one of those days where she was going to act all lazy and nonchalant and not care about anything at all and just sit on the couch all day, or she was just going to be gone for a day or two. It was always just never really knowing what kind of mindset she's going to be in. And at the same time, we never had anything because we grew up in poverty since this is how things were at the time.
I would say that it makes perfect sense why you felt like that other shoe was going to drop constantly and just had that anxiety all the time. Have you learned to kind of parent your inner child and speak kindly to yourself instead of feeling those anxious moments?
What do you mean by inner child? Could you elaborate a little bit?
Yeah, so a lot of the books I read on the topic of traumatic childhoods, they say that every adult has an inner child, which is essentially just you as a child. And when you never really had healthy parents guiding you when you were a child, you need to parent that inner child yourself. So say you're feeling anxious or insecure as an adult, that's really your inner child coming out because that inner child never had stability when you were young. So you could say to that inner child, don't worry, I'm here now, you're safe, I'm gonna take care of you. And really say everything to yourself that you needed to hear back then but didn't.
I wouldn't say I do exactly that, but I've always had a habit of feeling alone even when I'm not. And now when I'm in social groups or social situations, if I start feeling alone, I'll tell myself inside, like, you're not alone, it's just that they're talking right now. Make an effort to reach out and be a part of the group, that's all. I gotta remind myself and tell myself, you're not alone, they're not ignoring you, you're not the third wheel here.
Have you found ways to be more patient with yourself and understand that the root of these anxious feelings might be the instability that you experienced as a kid?
I have.
What is it like to find that grace for yourself?
Honestly, having a lot more patience with yourself is a virtue. It makes it feel like you've got all the time in the world and you don't have to worry about, am I going to be good enough by next week? Because it doesn't matter, you've got time to work on yourself.
When you woke up from the coma, were you still?
Yes, for months afterward I was.
What prevented you from attempting again?
What prevented me at the time was I really actually had no way to. As I explained, I'm completely blind and I couldn't walk yet at the time. Not just because of the surgery on my legs, but when you first lose your eyesight, it throws off your equilibrium. I had to be retaught how to walk. And I wasn't able to even get up and move around, and I didn't have access to anything I could hurt myself with. They already knew the drill. And by the time I was actually able to get up and move around and stuff, my mindset had changed by that point.
What advice do you have for a person who became blind as an adult?
Honestly, let me think. I'm trying to think about how I got picked back up from where I was on the ground, honestly, with being blind. Honestly, I would say don't wait to start working on it, Losing your eyesight is a grieving process. It's just like losing a family member. You actually go through the grieving process, and that's okay, but don't wait to start working on improving, because the sooner the better.
How long did it take for you to get back up after the attempt?
For months and months and months, I was just not really wanting to work on myself. I'll say it was about a year before I started actually trying to get up and work on myself mentally. And then it was a little bit longer after that before I started getting up and working on myself physically. Like, okay, it's not just all in your head, you gotta get up and start moving too. That's part of the fight.
What did you do that first year?
That first year was all just me trying to battle it mentally. Like, okay, we're gonna stay here. You're choosing to stay. We're not losing the souls just yet. But you gotta figure out why. You gotta figure out what's planting you, what's holding you here, what's anchoring you down. You gotta figure out a reason to keep on moving every day.
Have you learned how to navigate the world while blind?
Yes, so here I have my growing pain. And I actually learned how to use this only about 8 months ago. I didn't feel like working on myself at all. I was wanting to live, but at the same time, I wasn't wanting to get better. And so I wasn't practicing until 8 months ago. I just started. And I started practicing by walking or searching around the backyard, just up and down the sidewalk, trying to go off path and then find my way back. And then eventually I was able to walk all the way around the house, front and back. Then eventually I could cross the street and come all the way back from across the street. And that's where I'm at now with it.
Prior to your attempt, did you reach out to anybody?
No, I hadn't really tried to tell anybody what I was going through. I really just said goodbye, so to people without wanting them to know I was saying goodbye. So, I texted my dad and I was like, hey Dad, just so you know I love you. Hopefully everything's alright. And just try to make it seem like I was saying hi. They started talking to my brother.
Why did you do that without letting them know what you had decided?
I think a part of me was actually worried that they might try to stop me, and I didn't want to keep on moving forward.
What is the best thing a person can do if they get that text and they assume a person might be saying bye without saying bye?
Call them immediately. And don't just, automatically, hey, I know what's going on. You better not do anything stupid. But call them and start talking to them about it.
Were you eventually adopted, or did you spend your whole youth in foster care?
I spent all the time that I was in foster care. I wasn't in foster care throughout all of my childhood. From age 12 on up, I was. But before that, it was in and out. But I never got adopted. It was always just placements.
What happens when you eventually age out of foster care?
Some of the kids don't really have a place to go, and they sort of just get stranded, stuck, unless they have friends.
What happened to you?
But for me, I was lucky enough that I got and it was called an SIL, Supervised Independent Living, where you have somebody who works for the state that will come and inspect your apartment and make sure everything's on par, and you might even live like in one of the apartments nearby. And you share the apartment with other kids who are from the same situations in foster care. And the state pays for it as long as you're doing what you're supposed to, like going to school, working, and making sure the place is maintained.
Do you believe that being in foster care contributed to your depression?
Most definitely. I spent all the years that I was in there completely alone, and you don't have adults that are there for you. You have adults that are there to take care of you and make sure that you're safe. And sometimes they don't even do that. A lot of times they don't even do that. But they're never there to really care about how you feel. And so through the whole time that you're bouncing around in this system like a piece of trash in the pool, nobody ever once stops to ask you how you're feeling except the therapist. And you know that that's their job. And you know that if you tell them the truth, they're just going to medicate you very heavily. So throughout the whole system while I was bouncing around, I'm putting my hands up and fighting so many different kids for everything that I have. I'm just going through all this depression, and none of the adults are really worried about how we feel. It's just, you gotta get through it or you don't.
If somebody is meeting you for the first time, what are some topics you're interested in that they could talk about?
Music all the way. I feel like music is something that is really a good starter for anybody, because everybody likes music. We might all like different kinds of music, but it's something that we all have in common. And that's why I say it's a very good way to start off meeting somebody.
Tell me about some of your favorite bands.
Okay, I actually have one of them right here. This is Linkin Park. That is my #1 favorite rock band. Bring Me the Horizon was probably my second. I'm not going to go order from there, but Chazelle, let's see, System of a Down is a good one.
Chester Bennington, the lead singer of Linkin Park, tragically committed suicide.
In 2017.
I think it's pretty telling that a person who experiences massive success, financial success, he has fame, can also struggle with that same depression. Would you say that feeling can cross all boundaries?
I do believe that very heavily, and I feel like it doesn't really matter what he has. In fact, I saw a video of him just 17 hours before his suicide attempt. It was him hanging out with his family, having a good time laughing and everything. And so you really never see the signs sometimes with people like that. You never see the signs.
Can a person who's depressed be smiling and laughing on the outside?
Definitely.
Did you cover it well?
I think I covered it really well. I didn't want anyone to know that I was hurting. My whole life I always just been told, well, get over it.
What is it like when somebody tells you, get over it?
Well, by this point, it's kind of like, okay, you're right.
Do you think men are expected to kind of hide their feelings and not show any type of depression or sadness?
I do believe that men are expected to do that a little bit more.
Did you have a home to go to after you left the hospital?
No. Not for months after, but eventually I did have my mother come along, who was my first caregiver, but that was a very toxic situation that ended very badly, and I ended up going with my father after that. Should have been my first option, but he was 300 miles away at the time.
What is it like where you are now?
It's great. I live with my dad now, and I wake up every day and I'm able to focus on the things that I care about and not feel bad about it. I'm able to feel happy every day without being stressed.
Tell me about Kimberly.
Alright, so I first met Kimberly at the hospital where they were treating me for my accident. And she was actually one of the only people there, like out of 3 people who treated me the whole time I was there, who treated me like an actual person and spoke to me like I was normal. And it would talk about music all the time. She would actually ask me how my day was going and things like that. And we stayed friends since then.
I'm going to ask Kimberly some questions about when you first went in. I just want to make sure that I have your permission to ask her about anything about your suicide attempts.
All right.
What was it like when you first met Tristan? What was he going through?
Well, so the first day that I met Tristan, I was starting my morning shift at the hospital, and I was a nurse aide at the time for the hospital, and we do this thing called a handoff where like the person who was taking care of him for the night shift would like tell me like what's happening with him, because we don't get any like the position that I had, we don't have like any prior information on the patient that we're going to be taking care of that day. So the girl who was giving me the handoff was basically telling me that he was not all there, that he couldn't talk to you, that he's just going to be sleeping the whole time. When I went in there, he was like completely fine. Like to me, the only thing that was like different was the fact that he was blind, you know, he couldn't see, and then of course, you know, he had his trach going and everything. But like when you got to talk to him, he was answering you perfectly fine. At the time though, he couldn't talk as well as he does now. They were still like, what were they doing on your face though? Was it still just like kind of healing?
It wasn't really much of that. I had to practice a lot, so it was actually the healing, and then after that, I still couldn't talk until I worked on it.
Yeah.
Did you have to go to speech therapy?
No, they never gave me any until after I figured out how to talk on my own. And then once I took my first course of that, they said, "Oh, you don't need it." I was like, "Well, yeah, now I don't."
What is it like to suddenly have a facial difference?
Man, I don't really know how to explain it. I mean, back when I still had just a crater right here, and that was a lake, it was kind of odd, you know, going to reach for your nose and thinking that your nose is itchy, and there's no nose there. And it definitely causes, you know, problems in life. You know, for example, one of the things that had to be done during surgery, they cut my lips from here to here, and they put them inside the side of my face right here. They rolled them up into my cheek, and they sewed them in there. And it was there for so long that the tissue actually degenerated, so they can't place it back into place. It's too late. So now I cannot use a straw. I don't have lips for that. I can't use a spoon or a fork. I eat with my hands, and if I have to drink something, I always have to have one of these. And this is just to drink fluids. I just suck it up and I squirt it into my mouth and drink it. Also, I've had, this just started about 6 months ago, which was me almost, I'll say about 8 months after surgery this just started, but I have constant infections that just go on non-stop, and I'll get them to go away taking antibiotics, and they'll be gone for a week or two, and then they'll come right back, and that's just because my mouth can't close all the way without lips, and so it's open 24/7 when I'm sleeping, when I'm awake all the time. And you know, that can cause problems with your natural biosphere.
Kimberly, at what point did you realize you and Tristan were going to be good friends?
So I think it was when he was talking to me about music. He has a Nirvana tattoo. Actually, he didn't get a chance to show
Wait,
you.
which part?
No, this one right here.
This one?
No, this one.
Oh, this
the
one.
Spotify
I
tattoo.
forget. How did I forget it? I'm tattoo.
So it's a Spotify code for About a Girl, right?
So no, it's heart-shaped
Oh,
box.
heart shape box, yeah. So he told me to scan it with my phone, and then that's when we were talking about Nirvana for a little bit.
What are some of your favorite hobbies?
Oh man, that's a hard question. To be completely honest with you, and I'm ashamed to admit, I mostly just sit around all day long. But I do like to get out and walk around for exercise because I need to strengthen my neck and legs. And I like to play guitar. I guess I should mention that. Yeah, I actually play guitar a little bit.
What is it like having so much time at home and being blind?
It makes you start to, you know how people always say, man, I hate work. It makes you start to laugh so hard at that statement because you do anything to have the job again and it has something to get you out of the house. It makes you feel like, man, I wish I was working.
What did you do prior to the attempt? Did you work? Did you go to school?
I worked. I actually bounced around a lot from job to job. My favorite job was working at Drake Check as an oil technician.
When somebody meets you for the first time, what do you want them to know?
I want them to know that I am more than just how I look. I do have thoughts. I do have intelligent thought, and I am a person with feelings.
Even though you're blind, can you kind of gauge and understand how people react to you initially?
Yes, it's all in the tone of voice, and I pick up a lot better on that than I used to. People can go without really going at all, and it's all in their tone of voice.
What advice do you have for people that would help them give a friendly and accepting vibe off?
Just talk to me the same way that you talk to your brother, your sister, or your best friend, because I'm a person just like them. The only difference is that I look different, that's all.
What are you most proud of Tristan for?
Just the fact that he's keeping on like how he is, and you know, despite the things that he's going through, because there's a lot of stuff that he doesn't talk about, and you know, like despite all that, he's still very positive in his life, you know. And I actually come to him for like being lifted up, you know. Like if I feel depressed one day or if I'm just sad, he helps me. I talk to him.
He knows about all of the stuff I got going on that I don't talk about with other people on camera and things like that, or in my messages.
Why is it important to have a friend who knows everything?
Well, because that's a genuine friend right there. When they know, if your friend knows when you're doing bad and they know when you're doing good, then you actually have somebody that you can talk to and not feel like you need to keep it in and bottle it up.
What advice do you have for somebody who's contemplating?
I would say if somebody who's contemplating, you know, you hear people say all the time it's not worth it, and it's true, it's not worth it, but I tell you to go and see what is out there waiting for you before you even think about something like that. Because you never know what tomorrow holds. Tomorrow is always a mystery, and you never know. So at least wait until you see what's on that other side, the brighter side of tomorrow, before you decide to cut it short.
Would you say you're in a better place mentally now compared to prior?
I definitely think I'm in a better place mentally now, and I always try my best to explain what it is, but I have a hard time explaining what it is. I can't really piece it all together and tell you exactly why. But I know that my outlook on life has completely changed. You know, a problem like this used to be a problem like this. And now it's like any problem, I look at it like, well, there's a solution. There's no reason to freak out about it, because if there's a problem, there's a solution. And if there's a problem, it most likely means it's because something good is coming my way, and things happen for a reason. And I think really it might be that outlook on life that helps me carry myself a lot better day to day now than before.
You described those feelings of social isolation that you felt in your youth. Do you still feel that way, or do you have close connections now?
I feel that way sometimes, but a lot of days I have close connections. You know, I've got people I can call. I've got people like my dad right next to me that I can talk to. And sometimes you're still going to feel lonely. Even when there's people all around you, you're still going to feel lonely sometimes, and that's just a fact of life. And a lot of us just can't answer the question as to why we feel that way, and it will drive you up the wall, but just accept it. Sometimes, you know, you gotta do something to get you out of that headspace, and it's not going to be going and hanging out with other people. But there are days where, yes, I do still feel very lonely, and being blind actually contributes a lot to that, if I'm being honest, you know. It was really hard to adjust to that search, but you can be in a room full of people and feel completely alone when you're blind, even if they're all trying to have a conversation with you and be your friend. Just because, you know, you don't pick up on certain social cues and people are talking, you think people are talking over you, but you're just speaking at the wrong time, or you don't see this going on, so you try to interrupt on accident. Oh, my bad. And it can be very awkward, it can feel like you're being ignored a lot. And yeah, a lot of days I do feel socially isolated, but most days I don't.
What can other people do to create an accessible and inclusive environment for people who are blind?
Well, I'll say if you got a blind friend with you and you take them to a party and y'all are hanging out, make sure that you're not just talking to all your friends and coming back to them every once in a while, like, hey, how's it going? Try to introduce them to people. Try to, talk with them about what's going on around, make them feel welcome, help them understand what's going on around them.
He is so awesome. He is really funny. He's a cool guy. Just be his friend, because that's what he loves. He loves friends. He wants to hang out with people. So if anyone's in Houston, message him, give him a call. He's awesome. He's
Do
very
you want
personable.
people in Houston to reach out to you so you can form those connections?
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely like to start, not sending people. Like, I don't want a weekly schedule. Like Monday I got Rebecca. Tuesday is Tony. After that I got to hang out with Ryan.
Social calendar that extends months.
Oh my gosh.
It's been a pleasure meeting you. I'm really happy that we got to meet today. I'm happy that you're still here
Thank you so much, Chris.
and that you have a positive demeanor. And even if you don't have a positive demeanor, I hope you know that you're still worthy of being here. You're an amazing person. And please stay in touch with me.
Really, I will. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yes, sir.
Before we end the interview, is there anything else you'd like to say?
I've had a great day with you, Chris. This was a wonderful interview, and I've had a great time, honestly.
I have too, and I'm really happy we're friends now, and please stay in touch.
Yes, I will, most definitely.